Hey everybody, my name is Noah Kegley, and I've been working with Rise Up Coffee since about 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. Currently about 12 years, give or take. Over the years, I've performed a number of different roles with the company. Tim and I are longtime friends. We met in college, and we've worked at a kids' summer camp together. Became good friends, and I was fortunate enough to watch the seed of Rise Up Coffee be planted and start to grow. Currently, I perform a number of different roles for Rise Up. Generally, I kind of handle the human resources and payroll department, along with basically everything to do with the coming and going of the coffee itself. So I handle our green coffee contracts, our weekly green coffee ordering, basically making sure that we have enough coffee inventory in our building to pull off the orders that we need on a week-to-week basis, and kind of indirectly oversee the coffee getting to where it's going into the hands of our customers. It's really through Rise Up that my passion for coffee developed. I didn't enter the door at Rise Up with that passion for coffee. Over the years, the more that I learned about the coffee itself, but primarily the more I learned about the people involved in coffee, particularly the people who grow the coffee, the more passionate about it I became. Where I've become quite passionate over the years is about the diversity and the people involved in the industry, and the kind of coming together of cultures that allow it to work and result in a good cup of coffee. First and foremost, want to welcome you to Rise Up and to thank you for being here. We really value the fact that you've made the decision to join Rise Up as an employee. We love having you here. We love having fun in the coffee industry. We love having fun at Rise Up, and we look forward to having a lot of fun with you here. My advice to you is to listen, to ask a lot of questions, and don't be shy or unsure of yourself as you get going. There's a lot to learn. Take your time, take it all in. And as long as you make sure that you remember that our goal here is to honor the coffee and to give our customers the best cup of coffee possible, everything will be great. Okay, so let's talk about what coffee is. Coffee beans are actually the seeds of a fruit. So coffee is grown on trees. There are multiple varietals. So there are different genus and species and varietals of coffee plants. But generally speaking, coffee plants produce fruit. They're called coffee cherries, and it's literally because they're small, round cherry fruit that grows in clumps on coffee trees. Those coffee cherries ripen over time. That's part of the art that the coffee producers, producer is the word for coffee farmer. So the coffee producers' art that they work throughout the course of a harvest cycle is to develop those coffee cherries into great tasting coffee beans. Inside of each coffee cherry, typically there are 2 coffee beans, and they form almost like a peanut, like a flat side and a round side. During harvest time, once the cherries are ripe, they are picked by hand from a tree, and this is specific to specialty coffee like Rise Up, where every cherry is hand selected so that only the ripe cherries at the right time of ripeness are being pulled from the coffee tree. Once the coffee is harvested, the cherries are put together in large bags, large trucks, large containers, and then they go through some type of processing. I'll speak generally about the processing. For the most part, there are 2 types of general processes. There are more, but we'll talk generally here. There's a wet process and a dry process. The wet process is something that results in what most people think of as a coffee taste, a traditional type of coffee taste. The reason it's called a wet process is that there's a lot of water used during the processing of that. Basically, the cherry with the seeds inside goes through a mechanical process where the seeds are removed from the cherry. So once the beans are removed from the cherry, they're thoroughly washed, and then they're laid on beds to dry. Once those beans are dry, that's kind of when the next part of the process starts to take place, and they become of the form that we get them in and can roast them. So that's the wet process. The dry process, which is also referred to as natural process, is the oldest process in coffee, and it's understandable because no water is required for that process. The cherries are picked from a coffee tree once they're ripened, and then the cherries themselves are laid out in beds to dry. Ripe coffee cherries, typically in most varietals, are bright or dark red cherries. They're beautiful. So when you see a natural processed coffee, it's a very beautiful process. These long beds of beautiful, bright and dark red cherries laid out to dry. Whether the wet process or the dry process takes place, the next step is kind of the first step toward the coffee getting to us. So the coffee is packaged in large sacks. They're usually burlap or jute sacks, and they're typically about 150 pounds each. So the sacks are large and heavy, hard to move around. They arrive to us by tractor trailer. We get shipments of those every single week. You know, the coffee arrives, gets offloaded out of the trucks and brought into our roasting facility. The coffee that's inside those sacks is ready to be roasted. We refer to it as green coffee because you'll see that the coffee beans actually have a green color to them. Okay, so we have two different roasting machines in our facility. We have a San Franciscan that roasts 25 pounds of coffee, or up to 25 pounds of coffee in one batch. And we have a Diedrich, it's called a CR70, that can roast up to 70 kilograms or about 150 pounds of coffee in one batch. The green beans are weighed and sometimes blended. And by blended, I mean multiple coffees are put together to create a blend of coffee. We'll come back to that. The coffee enters the roasting machine where it has a set of variables depending on the blend of coffee or the type of coffee that we're making. We can do light roasts, medium roast, dark roast, and many variations of those. The variables that we're controlling in the machine are time, temperature, and airflow. Okay, our coffees that we roast are typically done one of two ways, either as a single origin, and as the name would imply, it comes from one origin, one location. So that is one bean coming from one place, being roasted alone and packaged alone, as opposed to a blend of coffee. So let's take a look at our house roast, for example. Our house roast is a blend of 4 different coffees. There's a bean from Guatemala, a bean from Honduras, a bean from Colombia, and a bean from Sumatra. We pre-blend those coffees, weighing them based on the percentages of each coffee in the overall blend. And then we put the coffee into the machine and roast it all together so that when it comes out, the final result is our house roast. It takes anywhere from 11 to 15 minutes to roast a batch of coffee. When it's done, there's a cooling process that takes several minutes. And after the coffee is cooled, it is then packaged. As you know, we offer coffee in multiple different bag sizes. We currently have 12 ounce, 2 pound, and 5 pound bags. Those bags are all packaged by hand. At the time of this filming, we roast anywhere from 10 to 15,000 pounds of coffee every week. That coffee is all packaged by hand, every bean. After those coffee bags are made, they then begin the journey to their final destination. Final destination might be our own Rise Up coffee shops. They might be other wholesale customers of ours, maybe restaurants or other coffee shops that serve Rise Up. But frequently, the final destination is someone's home. Once the coffee is finished being packaged, it is put into boxes and then it's shipped off to its final destination. All of our coffees at Rise Up are organic, certified organic. And the large majority of our coffees are also certified fair trade. I just want to talk a little about why that's important. The organic certification is a way to guarantee that the coffee that we are serving our customers has been grown without the use of pesticides. This is important for a number of reasons to us. First and foremost, the coffee that's in our customers' cups, we know and feel good that it is pesticide free and there have been no chemicals used in the process. So we believe that we're not only serving a healthier cup of coffee, but also a better tasting cup of coffee because of that. In an industry where it's very family driven, we love the idea that these folks are out in these fields and they are not working around chemicals. So not only are our customers getting the healthiest cup of coffee from us that they can, but our friends, our partners who grow our coffee are living the healthiest lives that they can. On to the topic of fair trade. Fair trade is important to us because of the relationships that I've been discussing. We want this to be a mutually beneficial relationship between Rise Up and the folks who grow the coffee. So a fair trade certification is one way to ensure that that happens. Another is by having direct relationships. That's one of the reasons that we visit the folks who grow our coffee and that we go to their farms, we meet their families, we meet them face to face, we spend time with them so that we know that our purchases are benefiting them as opposed to harming them. Just about everything that we do at Rise Up, the interactions that we have, are all people driven. We care about the people growing the coffee. We care about the people who work in coffee. We care about the people drinking our coffee. So because of that, and because of the great effort required to grow coffee, we think of the coffee producers as some of the most important people in the world, definitely some of the most important people in our industry, in our supply chain. So we have been very fortunate to develop some amazing relationships over the years in countries around the world. We've been fortunate to visit those folks at their farms and stay in their homes, meet their families, play with their kids and their pets. And it is something that has been absolutely life-changing for me. It has really cemented my passion for coffee. One of the main points that I want you to take away from this talk about the agricultural processes of coffee is the amount of human effort that goes into the entire process. Just to walk back through it, from the time a tree is planted, it takes 5 years before it can grow usable coffee beans. After that, it takes an entire year to grow a harvest or grow a crop of usable coffee beans. It's then picked by hand, again, a very labor-intensive process. It goes through a washing process, a drying process. It's packed by hand. The 150-pound sacks that it arrives in are all packed by hand, lifted and carried by humans. Very, very labor-intensive process. Once that coffee arrives to us, even after all of that labor, we then put our efforts to roasting the coffee and giving it the care that it deserves, all before it ever gets into the hands of a barista. So as I was taught, and I believe wholeheartedly in, to honor all of the work that has gone into that coffee, to honor the life of a coffee farmer, to honor the process, to honor the coffee itself, I, as a barista, should give my full effort to the craft, to the skill that I have in preparing a coffee beverage for a customer. The coffee deserves it, the people who grow it deserve it, and our customers definitely deserve it.